Let's walk through what a high school regatta actually looks like. If you have never done anything with sailing before, it'll all be new. If you've done some sort of sailing racing before, there'll be a lot that's similar, but probably a few changes in format as well, even for somebody who's done other kinds of racing. Starting off for a general sailing event regatta, the race committee creates a race course out of a set of buoys that are anchored out in the water. And if I share my screen, I've got a little share screen. Here we go, right there. So typically, a race course looks something like this. We have a race committee boat that's anchored, and then there's a buoy that's anchored to the side of the race committee boat. If we imagine the wind coming from the top of our screen there, right, the starting line that they've created there is perpendicular to the wind direction. So there's also a windward mark, that we call it. It's closer to the wind than the start line is, so windward. And then there's a leeward mark. It's spelled leeward, but for some reason it's pronounced leeward. Sailors were weird when they were making up words back in the day. So the leeward marks, and in a high school event, typically the leeward mark is actually split into two, and we can kind of see from the arrows here, sailors are going to go from the start line up to the windward mark. They're going to go around it. They turn left. They come back downwind, and then they can choose which of the leeward marks, which of the gate marks to go around. They go through the middle and then turn around this one or around that one. And then typically the races are set up that you're sailing around this race course for 2 laps. So we start at our start line, we go around our windward mark, then we come back through our gate marks, one or the other of them, and we go back to the windward mark a second time, and then we come down and we finish. So that's your basic race course format. There can be other setups. The marks could be set up in a different position, but for probably 95%, if not greater, of high school racing that you see, this is going to be the course that's set up. So then, as far as how many of these races are run, we run as many as we can typically. So a regatta is an all-day thing. Usually it starts around 9 or 10 in the morning. It'll run till 3 or 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And it's not just going to be the same couple of kids sailing all day. Another thing that's one of the things that's slightly different in high school sailing from other types of sailboat racing is that when a team goes to a high school regatta, they take an A division team and they take a B division team. So there's however many schools are at the event. For some reason, the magic number is 18. If you have a full fleet of boats, that's 18 boats. So we've got 18 FJs. Some places might only have 12 boats or 10, but if you have a full fleet, that's 18. I don't know why that number showed up, but it did. So somewhere between usually 10 and 18 teams will be at this event. And however many teams are there, that's how many boats are going to be out around this starting line and on this race course at the same time. And it's kind of like a track meet. And you got everybody lining up for the 5,000 meter race. It's just, 10 competitors, and they're all trying to beat all the others. And that's basically what's going on there. But what's going to happen in this high school regatta is your A division group of 2 sailors in an FJ, or a 420 is a very similar boat that some locations have. But we have FJs, obviously. So your 2 kids in A division will go out, and typically what'll happen is they'll run 2 races. They'll do 1 race around this buoy, and then the RC the race committee is going to start a second race. They'll do 2 races there, and then A division will come back in to shore, to docks, whatever is going on there. And the B division for that team will go out. It's a separate set of 2 kids, and they'll go out and they'll run 2 races, and they'll come back in, and A division will go back out again, and they'll run 2 races, and they keep swapping. And that way, it kind of turns it into a real team event. You can't just have like one real good skipper who wins the whole thing for you. You've got to have a whole team that's good to be able to win an event. So you have your A division and your B division. These divisions are constantly going back and forth from shore to the race course. So there can be a lot of traffic in little boats right there. And that typically that's what's going to be happening all day. There's typically no set like lunch break or anything, because every 2 races, any given kid is going to be coming back to shore. So they have usually a rotation takes about an hour. A race, we're typically aiming for a race to be between 15 and 20 minutes, which means between getting out to the race course, doing your first race, making sure everybody has time to finish, doing your second race, and then coming back to shore. That all usually takes about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. So whenever you're not racing, if your B division and A division's out on the water, there's your lunch break. Whenever you're hungry, you've got an hour to sit on shore. So typically it's just a kind of seamless progression of cycling back and forth throughout the day. So that's what's going on. And now we'll kind of move into, at any point, if anybody's got a question about anything, feel free to hop in and ask. But that's kind of our basic overview that's what a high school regatta is. So we'll kind of look at what we have, what SCC is doing to make all that happen. So something new, obviously, is that we're at a new location this season. So some of our normal routine is going to have to change. And so one of the things that I'm coming up with new for the season is, if you've seen the spreadsheet we've put together with all the different sign-up positions, or positions you can sign up for regattas to volunteer at. Let me go back and share the screen. I think all of you have seen that, but it's right here. So it looks like we've got just about everybody filled in here. So that's pretty cool, right? So we'll kind of run through what all these are, but starting down at the bottom, we've got the parking monitor, garage monitor, and beach monitor. So my vision for that, these are all new stuff, new positions that we haven't done, haven't needed at Tall Timbers before, mainly because of at Tall Timbers, we can, see everything that's going on. I guess some of them we have, but let me I'll pull up our little map of Chancellor's Point. Let me stop share and pull up this right here. So obviously, I think most of you at this point have been down and seen the place. But as you're coming in, this is the long dirt road. The gravel parking lot opens up. And this is going to be where we envision putting as many people, as many vehicles as possible, right? So by my best estimate, measuring out the space we have, I think we'll be able to fit between 30 and 40 cars in here. But if we have 18 teams showing up for a regatta, that's going to be more than 30 or 40 cars. It's probably going to end up being more like 70 to 80, depending on how many people are coming as a single person, how many people are carpooling. It's probably somewhere between 60 and 80 cars. So I should actually know by the end of this weekend. I'm talking with the Chancellor's Point people exactly where they're going to let us, what parts of ground they'll let us put other cars on. We're thinking right now a good overflow parking for us will actually be along the road. You probably noticed as you're coming in, there are some pretty decent flat spots along the side of the road, and that road's about 1,000 feet long from the gate up to the parking lot. So there's actually a good amount of overflow parking we'll be able to fit there. But by the time we have our first event coming up this next Saturday, we'll know exactly where we want to put cars when we fill the lot. And so our parking monitor will kind of be in charge of that. If we find that, hey, we need to get a second person helping him, we'll work that out on the day. But at least we'll have somebody whose main job is, as cars are coming in, tell them where to go. Then obviously, as we go past our parking lot, we're down to the little pull around loop. We've got the little garage, and we'll have the garage monitor here. I think in the beginning of the day, the idea is that we'll do like we've usually done at Tall Timbers, and we'll have all the sails and rudders and tillers put into boats in the morning. Hopefully be able to spread boats along the beach as well. But going through the day, if anybody's needing anything from up here, tools or gear or life jackets, we will have somebody here who knows where that all is. And at the end of the day, when we do have kids coming back up to put sails away, there's somebody here at the garage who knows here's where you should put your sail, and that sort of thing. So that's our garage monitor. And then beach monitor down on the beach. Obviously, we don't have as concise, as easy to figure out storage arrangement for the FJs once they're all put on the water. There's no real guidance visually as to how to put them back the way we did have at Tall Timbers with that long row of racks that we just put the bows of the boats right up on, and it was fairly obvious as long as you got them in number order. Here I guess we've kind of worked out that we have a row of 7 boats against the trees, and then a row of 6 in the middle and 5 on the end as the clearing kind of shrinks toward the water. But we'll make sure that our beach monitor knows what that's supposed to look like and can kind of help people as they're either moving boats to the water in the morning or pulling boats back up onto the grass at the end of the day. So that'll be our visual guidance for different things as they're spaced apart and can't really see what's going on. We fortunately have a decent sized collection of VHF radios, so we'll be able to communicate between ourselves and call for help if we need at any time. If we find that maybe we find that the beach monitor isn't really needed in the morning because everybody's just throwing the boats in the water anyway, and maybe they're more useful helping the parking monitor. So we have 2 people running parking. We'll kind of this first weekend we'll kind of working all that stuff out. So that's those first 3 things on the where'd I go on the little sign up list here. So moving to what else we got. So that's all that stuff. Now moving out to the water, we show the little picture of that Racecourse, right? We had that guy up on the screen a minute ago. So we have to figure out how to make this happen out on the water. Obviously, the wind comes from different directions. The wind is different strengths at different times. And so that's all going to affect how we set this course. So typically what happens is whoever's on the RC boat, the race committee boat, they'll go out and they will anchor their boat somewhere in the general vicinity of where we want the race course, for the simple reason that it's a lot easier to just drag a little tiny buoy with an anchor around to a new spot than it is to have to pull up the anchor and move the boat, turn on the engine and all that. So we'll usually try to have them be able to sit in one spot for the day. So they'll anchor. Once they're set and they're holding position, they've realized their anchor's not dragging or anything, they're going to be there. We'll go and put down the starting buoy, and the race committee is able to help us with that. Whoever's in the mark boat, we call it, the buoys we call marks. So the mark boat is just the little rib that's moving the buoys around. So race committee is kind of looking at the wind angle, looking out to the side, trying to get the 90 degrees out to the side. We'll get that little buoy for our start line. And typically we're trying to do about a boat length to a boat length and a half of start line for every boat that we have on the race course. So if we do have that full set of 18 teams, we got 18 FJs out sailing on the water, then our start line is going to be 18 times the FJ is about 14 feet long. So I'm not going to do that math in my head, whatever that number is, somewhere between there and 27 times 14, because that would be 1.5 boat lengths for every boat, right? So somewhere between there. We're not going to get out our ruler and try to measure exactly, more kind of an eyeball. If we end up with a start line that's 17 boat lengths long, if we measured it exactly, it's not the end of the world. We'll do our best to put it in a general vicinity. And then once we've got that set, we can start with getting our other buoys down in the water. Typically, this is kind of the order. We'll go the RC boat, then the start mark, then the windward mark. And then if you're pressed for time, if you are worried about wind dying later in the day or something like that, we want to get races off as soon as possible. Once we have those 3 buoys down, we can start a race. And then once the sailboats are working their way upwind, we've got 5 or 6 or 7 minutes to real quick jump in and throw down the gate marks if we're really, really short on time. Usually we've got plenty of time, as all these sailboats will take a while to get themselves launched and head off the beach and all that good stuff. But when we're setting the windward mark, we do want to be able to center it over top of the start line. And we are also, where the overall course in this, running 2 laps, we want that to take about 15 to 20 minutes for a high school race. So I don't have any secret equation or anything. I've been doing that long enough that I'm able to kind of eyeball it, and usually it works out to about right. But you just kind of run this windward mark up some distance. If there's more wind, it means the sailboats will be moving faster, and we're going to need a longer course for the same time, right? If it's less winds, the course can be shorter. And the PRO, the principal race officer, is the person kind of running the event on the water. He'll be the one, or at least one of the people that's on the RC boat. And so we're kind of listening to his cue for whoever's in the mark boat is kind of driving upwind, and they're on the radio, and the RC will be telling them, we'll keep going, maybe go 150 feet more or go 10 boat lengths more or something like that. We need to come back to the right a little bit. So they'll cue them through radio to get the buoy dropped right where they want it. And then kind of same deal for the gate marks. These are it's kind of like making a second little start line, but farther up, little higher up and closer together. So these only need to be about 6 to 10 boat lengths apart. And so once we get all these set, then we're ready for starting the day, right? We've got our race courses there. And that's kind of the main things that they're thinking about, is where's the wind coming from, so we get the buoys at the right angle, and how much wind do we have so that we don't make the course way too long or way too short. And obviously these little buoys, little tiny anchor, it's pretty easy to adjust if we need to. If the wind does change or we realize we set it a little short, first race was only 12 minutes, let's lengthen that a little bit so it's closer into 15 or 16 minutes. So there's a lot of room for adjustment. There's nothing that says you have to get this perfectly right or everything's going to be horrible. So that's setting our race course. Next is when, as we're going through the day, how do we run races? So there's a couple different jobs on the race committee boat that are going to need to be done. Some of them need to be just one person doing that. Some can be kind of multitasked, and the same person can do several jobs. But we need somebody who's in charge of sound signals, and somebody who's in charge of flags, somebody who's in charge of scorekeeping. And it's often handy to have somebody that's kind of watching the time that races are taken. Like we were saying, we do have that time frame, and kind of also just looking at if there's been any wind changes or anything like that might want us to shift some buoys around. And a lot of those, like we said, can be done by the same person. But looking at the busiest that we are on the race committee boat is during a start of a race or during the finish of a race. So walking through the start of a race, a high school race is started with a whistle sequence. It's a 3-minute countdown, basically. So I guess the easiest way to explain it without trying to make you memorize all these signals right now is to just say that you get a long whistle blast if there's 1 minute left, and you get a short whistle blast if there's 10 seconds. And so you'll get these signals at 3 minutes, which will be 3 long blasts. You'll get another signal at 2 minutes. You'll get one at 1:30, at 1 minute, and then at 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. And then it'll just give you a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, which is 1 long whistle blast. Now at SCC, we figured out how to make that easy. And we bought a little box that has a timer and an air horn connected to it. So the whistleblower doesn't actually have to sit there blowing on a whistle looking at a stopwatch. They just get to press start on the starting horn, and it does everything else for you. It counts down and it gives you all the horns for that. So that at our regattas is simplified, and that person that would have had to be doing that can do something else. It's quite handy. We will have, there will be a whistle on the boat in case the starting horn breaks down for whatever reason. But the main idea is that this works out. So we've got the sound signals to tell people where you are in the starting signal. There's also some possible signal flags that we might have to fly. So if I pull up the other, where do I have it? Right here. If I pull up this guy, there's a few different flags we'll have on the race committee boat. And don't worry, this screen I'm pulling up is not all of these we're gonna have. So one that we'll have is I flag, X flag, and first substitute. So if somebody in a sailboat, if somebody is they cross the starting line just a little bit too early, if you're counting down, we're in the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the race committee sees a bow of a sailboat pop across the line, and then the long whistle goes. Whoever that sailboat was, whatever number that was, they started too early. They've got to come back below the start line, farther away from the wind, and cross the start line again. If that happens, race committee is going to get on the megaphone and start calling whatever number was that boat was, and the numbers are on the bow of the boat, right on the front, and they're also on the sail. They're matched. We make sure that nobody goes out with bow 5 and sail 7 or anything. So you can, whichever one you can see, that's the number we call. But they'll get on the megaphone and start yelling the number 5 over early, and we'll fly the X-ray flag. We'll put that up. Don't ask why it's a T, not an X. Couldn't tell you. But that's the symbol in the racing language for an individual recall. It's called, where we're telling one boat to come back to the start, and it may be more than one. Maybe there are 2 or 3, and we're calling all those numbers, but it's an individual recall. Sometimes there's too many boats that have crossed just a little bit too early for the race committee to accurately call all of them. If there's like 7 boats that went over at once, more often than not, the race committee is going to say, well, I don't want to let one of them get away free by accident, right? So we couldn't tell who it was, so we're going to bring the whole fleet back. We'll redo the start sequence. That's a general recall. That's when we fly the first substitute pennant. I don't know why they bounce all over the alphabet. That's just the ones that were kicked out. So those are the 2 that we might see if we have to call one or 2 people back, or if we have to call everybody back. The other flag that we might see is the I flag. That one it's a little, it'll a minute to explain. We'll go through this. So if there has been a general recall, it may be for a reason such as everybody's trying to push the line, and they're all ending up a little bit over early. Maybe there's current that's kind of pushing everybody upwind towards the wind, and it's making them all drift over the line sooner than they mean to. But for whatever reason, race committee wants to make sure that that doesn't happen over and over, right? If we spend 10 to 15 minutes trying to get one race start off, that's just wasting time. So in the high school sailing rules, it says that if we run a general recall, the starts after that are going to use I flag, and it's basically saying that if we go back to our race course real quick. If somebody, where's my button? Here it is. If we have a general recall, if a boat goes upwind of the start line between 1 minute to go all the way down to the start signal, so they're like a 1 minute time frame, if they go above the start line, they can't just dip their nose back down right below again. They actually have to sail all the way around to one end or another of the line and go below it, and then they can restart. So it's also called the round the ends rule sometimes. So it's, if we poke our nose over by accident, we've got to go all the way around the end and then come back down. And so that is meant to discourage people from pushing at the line, pushing too hard at the line and having the whole fleet go over at once and having to call everybody back again. So that's the I flag rule. And if what I said doesn't make sense, that's fine. You'll pick it up as we go. All we have to know is that's one more flag that we might see used sometimes. So those are the three out of all the alphabet. Those are the only three that we really need to know. Those are the only three alphabet flags that we might have on the boat. We will have just an orange square flag up somewhere, and that's just denoting that is where the line is being marked on the committee boat. Because anybody who's bringing their motorboat to anchor, it's probably about 20 feet long, right? So where are the kids are trying to figure out where's the line? What part of the motorboat is the race committee looking from? So how can I be accurate on the line? So the orange flag, wherever it's planted in the boat, that's kind of where the race committee is looking along to look to the other end of the line, to that buoy. And so the kids can see, well, there's the flag, there's the buoy, that's my line. So those are the flags that we'll have out on the water there. Let's see. So what I've got. So we've run through race course, running races. All right. So we've got our race started now. And now race committee can kind of sit back for a little bit, right? Maybe they had to call a few boats, call a few over early, but for the most part, everybody's up on the race course. They'll be going around the windward mark, going around those gates, going back to that windward mark. And then 15 to 20 minutes later, we'll start seeing them come through the finish. So we'll also have on the RC boat, if I find my share screen again, we'll have something that looks like this. So this is the score sheet, and all we have to do, it's nice and simple, just whoever crosses the finish line first in our first race of the day here, we'll mark it down. Oh, boat 12 won the first race. So we literally just write down the number 12 in that blank. We fill it all the way in. If there was anything weird, such as, we'll explain what this word means in a minute, but if one boat protests another boat, we'll mark that down. Boat 13 is protesting boat 7, whatever might be happening. And then, like we said, you're typically running 2 races in a rotation before we send the kids in to bring out the other division. So here's race 1A. We'll run that. We'll run race 2A. And then the kids go in, they swap, come out, all right, up to race 1B, and then race 2B. Now the kids go in again to swap. So there's enough score sheets set up so that we can run through. Usually we try to get through as many races as there are boats. Typically we don't get that far, but we'll print out enough scores for 18 races. So that will be on the RC boat somewhere with appropriate writing utensils as well. We've got to make sure that we have everything we need, and that's how we score things, or on the race committee boat. That's what we do with scoring, which brings us to the next portion, which kind of moving back on land. I guess this is going to also be done on the race committee boat. In the past, we've often just had a little table set up and people working on a little iPad or laptop or something, but actually scoring the event, actually scoring the event, setting up who's winning, who's losing, all that stuff. So there's a whole website that's devoted to scoring high school regattas. It's called TechScore. I guess it's technically it was started for college regattas, but if I bring this up, let me share this screen if I can hit my button correctly. Where do we go? Here we are. All right, so TechScore, the address, if you're ever at a high school regatta and you're wanting to follow along with results, you're wondering how your kid is doing sailing out there, you go to this site up here, scores.hssailing.org, and then any regattas that are happening are in this little thing right here. We can actually scroll down and see that, hey, here's what's coming up for the next weekend, including the regatta at SCC. Obviously no scores yet because it's not happened, but this is it's coming up. I've got it entered in the system. But if we're actually running the event, if we're the person that's entering the scores into the site, we actually don't go here. We go to instead of scores.hssailing.org, we go to ts.hssailing.org. And all this we can get set up before we actually start the day, so it's already here, and we don't have to worry about where we're supposed to go again, because whatever device, we've already got it set. It's actually, they've got it set up very easy to enter things in. We have this little tab here at the top of the screen. Here's our name. We're in the correct regatta, we know that. But we can say enter finish, and then it gives us all these lovely drop-down menus. We just have to file through and figure out what's up. All right, here's our first race. We've just got the scores back from it, and we'll just hit enter finishes. And as we go down here, we can see we can do it either. Let's see. Oh, I missed one. Hang on. Missed one thing here. There should be able to put these as numbers. Let's see. Well, that's all right. If not, we'll come back later. So first, we should be able to come to, oh, you know what? I need to change something here. Did I set a rotation? That's what I didn't do. So first, we have to set the rotation. It doesn't know which boats all those teams were. That's why they're showing up just as teams. We want to make sure that we don't have to look up which team is in which boat. So this is something you won't have to do the day of. This is something that I just forgot to do a minute ago. So create rotation. We should have 4 or 5 other schools that have not paid their dues yet, and so they don't show up in the site just yet, but they should be there by Saturday. And this is the little drop down that I was missing a minute ago. We want to use sale numbers from rotation, not team names. That way we just can enter in the numbers right off the score sheet as it's sent to us from the committee boat. We don't actually have to look up which team is in which boat. And so now we can go back and we say, all right, here's race 1A. We're going to enter finishes. And now, oh, look, it turns out boat 12 won the first race. So we can literally just click on the number 12 over there, and there it puts it in, and it even grays it out so we don't accidentally make a mistake and click it again. Or if we wanted to, we can use the drop-down menu. Boat 7 was second in that race. So we can do it either way. It still keeps track no matter which way we do it. If we accidentally hit the same boat, it'll say, hey, wait, red light, you did that wrong. You hit something wrong. So they make it very easy to use. So you basically just go through, enter in the order, and once you're done with that, you put all your numbers in. You'll hit enter finish for race 1A, and then it's done. And it'll show up on TechScore when people go to the scores.hssailing.org and they click on this. There'll be another tab that comes up that says results, and they can click on that tab that says results, and it'll show who's finished where in which race. So this, I think I can just cancel. There we go, because I obviously don't want to enter finishes right now. So that is TechScore. It's actually very nice and easy to use, and that's how we'll be entering our results in during the day. So whoever's put down for scoring for the day, that's your little job. I think we'll have a nice little spot on the beach or something, little table set up so we can see racing, but also be able to put in results as they come in. Usually what we've done to get results from the score sheet on the race committee boat to the scoring table is we either send in just a photo of the RC. We'll just take a photo of the score sheet and send it to the scorer, or we could just read it over the radio, just in order the numbers 12, 7, 5, just from 1 down to 13 or 14 or 17 or how many boats are in your regatta. We've used both methods in the past. We'll figure out a good one for this weekend. Cool, so that is TechScore. One more thing, or I guess a couple more things that the people on shore might deal with is earlier we said the word protest. So if we don't know how sailboat racing works, here's another quick little explanation of something. When we know there are some rules that have to be existent for sailboat racing, so that everybody isn't just running into each other. Who's got right of way at any given time? And so when a boat breaks one of these rules, then when a boat breaks a rule, then the other, they're supposed to take their own penalty. So sailboat racing is a little different from many other sports in that there is usually no judge or umpire on the water. There's nobody saying, hey, you broke the rule. They blow a whistle at you and you have to, you got to let the other team take a free kick or something, right? Like in soccer. That doesn't actually happen. So we're a self-governing, self-policing sport. So if you break a rule, typically you know that you broke the rule. It's usually pretty obvious, and you're supposed to take your own penalty. And in most dinghy sailing, including high school sailing, the penalty for breaking a rule is to spin in a circle. And you'll actually do that twice. Spin a 720 degrees, twice around in a circle. And then you can continue in your race. So it's basically saying, hey, I have to stay in one spot here for this amount of time, and then I can continue racing. So I have to give myself a little disadvantage, right? So if a boat does break a rule but does not take that penalty, the boat that they fouled or the boat that they broke a rule against, and that boat can protest them, and that's basically just saying, hey, I'm calling you out that you broke this rule, right? So if that offending boat still does not take their penalty, then when all these boats finish the race, whoever called in the protest is supposed to go over to the race committee boat and say, hey, I'm protesting boat so-and-so. They don't have to explain why or what happened at that time, right? All they're doing is saying, I'm boat 13, I'm protesting boat 5. And then we saw there's like the little notes line on your score sheet there. You just mark that down, send that information into the score table as well, so they know something happened. And then when the sailors come off the water, which they're going to be doing every 30 or 45 minutes for their rotation, that team that is trying to protest the other team, they're going to come over and they're going to get a protest form from the score table. And that protest form looks something like this. Or do I have it up? I do have it up. It's on, let me go to here. There we go. So if I share this screen now, it should be this guy. Basically, it's just saying, hey, in this one, I've actually got, I couldn't find the one, it's somewhere in my files. I've got a simplified one for high school stuff because a lot of the stuff we don't need. But it's basically just describing, hey, I'm this boat, I'm this team, right? And this is what happened. This is where it happened. This is when it happened. Here's a picture of what happened. Here's a description of what happened. And kind of write down all that stuff, because obviously nobody that's on shore, probably none of them saw this, right? Even the people on the water, the Mark boat and the race committee, people on the race committee boat, odds are they didn't see it happen either, right? Because there's 18 boats out on the water. They're not going to be looking at every single boat all the same time. So usually only the couple of people that were involved actually saw what happened. So they'll fill out this form and they'll turn it in, and then we'll have a protest committee, which for high school sailing usually is we grab a couple of high school coaches, and they come and they have the protesting boat and the protested boat. The kids from those two boats will be there, and the couple of coaches will be basically just listening to the description of the incident. We should have the rule book that they can look through, and they can reference the rules that they're talking about. It was a port starboard collision. Well, yeah, it turns out usually the starboard boat is in the right there. Starboard boat has right of way. So if the port boat hit them, that would be their fault. They get the penalty. Usually it's not quite that simple. If it's something that simple, that's usually when the kids do take their penalty on the water. But that's the basic idea of it, right? So there's basically two things can happen out of this protest hearing. Is either the protest committee, the high school coaches, they decide that yes, there was a rule broken. Maybe it was the boat that was being protested. Maybe the boat that filed the protest was confused and they broke a rule. Or maybe nobody broke a rule. Maybe everybody was just confused all around, but actually nothing wrong happened. That sometimes is the case, depending on what's going on. So if that happened, then everybody's free to go. We're all good. We've learned a little bit more about the rules, and it's a good deal. But if it turns out somebody did break a rule, then they might get disqualified from that race. We'll go into the score system, and actually, well, we don't have to pull up tech score again. There's a little option in tech score we can go back in, and we can say under the finishes tab, we can say add penalty, and we can choose to add a disqualification to whatever boat number it was in whatever race that was. And the points penalty there is it drops you to last place +2. So if there's 18 boats in the regatta and you get disqualified from a race, then suddenly you have 20 points in that race, which is very unfortunate for you. You should have done your spin at the time, and maybe you would have lost a couple places, but certainly you wouldn't have lost 20 places in that race. So kind of helps keep people honest. And that's kind of that's how the protest works. But these protest forms will kind of we'll have a little stack of them on the scoring table so that kids can come and fill one out if they need to. We usually, in the spirit of the self-policing sport, the Corinthian sport, as people describe it sometimes. I guess that phrase means something. I don't remember the exact definition. I guess that's kind of basically it. Is kind of self-policing, keeping things the way they should be, that sort of thing. But all the coaches at different programs, that's something that they are trying to teach their kids, is that we don't have officials. We have to keep the sport working the way it should be, and so you have to take your penalties if you earn them. So we hope that everybody's taking their spins on the water if they do foul, but sometimes we do have to come back and sort it out on land. So that's always left as an option. But that's the stuff that's going on land. We've got the scoring table, we've got the protest forms, and if I'm looking down here, I think I've about run through everything that I meant to.